Peace and love. My name is Devine Carama. I am a hip hop artist, but I'm also the director of One Lexington, which is a violence prevention organization. And we are here today to have a tough but much needed conversation on domestic violence. I mean, it is clear that we cannot keep expecting women to solve this problem and have this conversation amongst themselves. Men are victims of domestic violence as well, but when you look at the dynamics, the abuse overall is a little bit more severe when we talk about women. It is oftentimes more fatal. The societal response is a little different and the impact is different. I mean, it's almost like asking a person of color to solve racism, right? And so I just think us as men need to step up and we need to have this much needed conversation. And we got a lot of real men that's going to join us throughout the next few weeks to have this conversation. This series is produced for the City of Lexington's It's Time initiative. It is called The Good Guy Guide, and it is not because I or any of our guests are perfect men by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just about pushing and perfecting ourselves to be better each and every day. And so, everybody, welcome to The Good Guy Guide. Let's get started. We are here today to have a tough conversation. Our goal is to hold a space that is gentle and without judgment so we can discuss things in an open and dynamic way. I am joined by some incredible guys. We got Jason Otis, Devine Smith, and Aldo Gomez. Jason is a local business owner at Print Lex. Devine is a photographer, content creator, and Aldo is a Latin American language access specialist at Global Lex. Welcome, guys. Thank you. Good, no problem. Today's episode is about ways in which race play a part in violence. Whether it's cultural norms, fear, repression, anything that historically suppresses the truth and the reality of communities of color. This show is designed to look at it all. So let's start there. How has race played a role in your life, particularly when it comes to messaging around masculinity?
I think that there are some views held in the Black community about men needing to be providers, needing to care for their families, while at the same time not always understanding the challenges that can come along with that. You're working your 9 to 5, then coming home to family dynamics, whatever that looks like. Sometimes it has a strain on a man who has all of these things kind of put on him.
Yeah, a lot going on up here, right? What about you guys?
Oh man. So being where I grew up and how I grew up, my dad and stepfather were both in the military. So from a race standpoint, I was exposed to a lot early, and there were some good and bad things that came of that. The good thing is I was exposed to so much. The bad was I think I got comfortable in my friend group because it was so diverse. In our pocket, we were so comfortable. And just on a very, basic level, we were comfortable saying things to each other. That probably we shouldn't have been saying, in retrospect, but nobody ever got their feelings hurt. We always knew where it came from. It came from a place of love. And then when I got to college, I realized, well, the rest of the world, the entire world is not like this.
What about you, Aldo? And I got a follow-up question with you too.
I kind of have like the same experience, like the provider. It happens with the Hispanic community. And what you were saying, like calling names and things like that. I'm 46 years old, so kind of like old school. Yeah. I'm originally from Costa Rica, and the reason why I'm telling you that is with the Hispanic community, it's similar depending where you come from. But yeah, the male have to be the provider. Whatever I said, especially old generations. Yeah. You have to follow through that. The good thing between all that machismo is like if the way you treat your mother, you better respect her. And I know talking to my co-workers, it happens with the African-American community. Yeah. So I correlate like basically what you were all saying.
Yeah. So Jason, do you feel, because that's interesting, right? You actually started in a kind of diverse, not bubble, but your surrounding was diverse. Yeah, so you started in a way where a lot of people may be in deficit. So do you think the world needs a little bit more of what you had? Or do you also think you learned a little bit once you got out and saw kind of how the rest of the world was?
I think a little of both. There was a short period of time when my parents got separated. I moved to rural Virginia with my grandparents. I mean, that's rural anywhere is going to be almost the same. And so it was like my first experience with racism. And, I'm not, it was from white and black because I was the only non-white and black there. And so they both saw a common difference, something that they weren't used to. So I got it from both sides. So I built up a defense mechanism for that. And I said the same types of things back to them that they were saying to me, because that's what you do when you're second grade, first grade, that's the only response that you have. But then when I got back into that pocket again, I've never had a problem accepting anybody because that's just how I grew up. So I think we need more of it. I think we need more of it with the caveat though, that not everybody has that experience. So you have to kind of maybe be responsible to help teach by example. I guess that makes sense.
It's interesting because me growing up, there's this duality to being an African American, especially in a place like Lexington, because I feel I was pulled both ways, kind of. I felt like in my neighborhood early on when I was younger, I had to be tough. My parents always told me that I had to do twice as much to get half as far. So there was this edge that I had to have as a black man, but then at the same token, watching my dad, watching some older black men, you also had to be careful and kind of be strong, but also walk this thin line because you didn't want to be viewed as like the angry black guy or you didn't want to be too militant because if you did, you may get even more prejudice. So at a young age, I would say balance when it came to my masculinity, just kind of watching other black men in my neighborhood and how they had to walk this tightrope. And that was weird, as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you're not trying to have balance on the playground. I remember the first time getting called an N-word, right? And even though in my book, Martin Luther King was turning the other cheek, in my neighborhood, you're not really supposed to turn the other cheek, right? So it's this constant battle I think I had. And so I don't know if y'all can kind of relate to that duality. But something I hear you say is you get it from both sides. And that is interesting. Aldo, do you ever feel that? Obviously, if you look at the Latino population, it's less than the African-American population, not quite half, right? Do you ever feel you get it from multiple communities or kind of feel like you're getting it from all sides growing up?
Yeah, especially with emotions, like you were saying, like you have to deal as a man. You have to repress that.
Yeah.
And in my case, what it helped, you're not supposed to cry. We all know, like you're not supposed to cry or show your emotion. So sometimes it builds a little bit of anger. So in my case, it helped like sports. So I kind of like transform that energy and that aggression. I love to do box sometimes, things like that. My hypothesis is like, especially in the Mexican community, that's why we got such a good boxers. Because you kind of internalize that, you keep it together, and then release it in that way. But if you don't know how to handle it, that aggression, sometimes if, just having like a regular soccer game or something like that, you see those kids can explode. And I noticed that like in the community, working here for more than 10 years with the Latino community, I noticed like there's that anger, that repression that you hold, and in any moment it can be released and you don't know how to handle it.
Do you see that not just in sports and within the actual activities that you're trying to use to deal with that, but do you see that within the community, even within, and I know it's the thing that nobody wants to talk about out in front, but even within the homes, right? We talk about domestic violence or community violence. Do you ever see it exploding out in the community as well?
What experience for the past 10 years, I used to work and going to forums and also working in the schools.
Yeah.
So I used to mingle a lot with the parents.
Yeah.
And we're really good hiding it. What I mean hiding is I'm not gonna do a show right here, but once I go home, someone is gonna know.
Yeah. You kind of giving that look like,
So, yeah.
you just wait. Yeah.
So we knew, like, with the kids, sometimes, like, the way, for example, if the parents have a meeting at school, it's hard for the teachers, how the way they say you're not having good grades. So what's going to be the consequences? So we at that time I was working in a health clinic, so we tried to educate the parents and things like that. But yeah, there's that struggle of power. Like, once you get home, the kid cannot say anything. It's hard for him to defend at the moment. So that's, in that sense, that's what it is.
Y'all get that butt whooped when y'all was little?
Absolutely.
Ooh.
I'm
Got
24.
that tail whip.
Still got my butt whipped.
I'm not
Any
trying to get my
memories?
mom in trouble, so I'm not going to say too much.
That's why I'm drinking.
No, actually, sorry.
Look, me and Aldo just took a sip. Look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. The reason I asked y'all that, and all of us probably have, received a couple, whippings maybe growing up, but it was interesting when my parents, and I don't know the science on this, right? But I do know when my parents started to ascend, like, financially, and have more access just to, like, different trains of thought and resources, I saw a shift in my parents. So me and my brother will always joke, right? Because we're about 6 years apart. And so, of course, I remember my parents struggling, a little apartment, then a duplex. And I remember, getting whooped was just a regular thing. It wasn't no big deal. But I remember when my brother was born, I remember we moved kind of into the suburbs, right? And my mom started researching and more access to this and that. And all of a sudden there was a change. And I used to laugh with my brother, like, you didn't really get whooped the way I got whooped, right? But it makes me wonder, and again, I'm just sitting here talking to y'all. I don't know the science, but I do know that as my parents learn more, gain more access to information, that they did shift their behavior a little bit, especially when it came to consequences. And it just made me wonder, what about underserved communities who don't have access to this information, right? Knowing a better way, and they're simply going off these generational norms that their families have been doing for years, because obviously we know now that whipping our children isn't the way to go, but it's the only way my parents knew. It's the only way my family members knew. My question to you all is this, and again, if you don't know the science, that's cool, but do you think more access to information, do you think communities who are underserved, regardless of race, do you think violence is more prevalent in those communities? And if so, what do you think some of those root causes are? Obviously, I feel lack of information. When you know better, you do better is part of it. But what are other things that you all see? And it may be your own lived experience.
For me personally, I think it's like a lack of safe environments. So for
Okay.
me, I've been very blessed to have two parents that always provided a safe space for me to talk to them. Not so much when I was younger, because I was a bad kid, very bad. Got beat. That was my getting beat era. But I grew up a little bit, and from then it was, hey, we can have a conversation and use our words to talk this out. Now that you have more words, now that you have vocabulary, now that you're going to school and interacting with other people, we can talk about why this grade behavior isn't okay for us, or why doing this thing on the playground isn't okay. And from there, for us, that's been a thing that's been able to translate now into me growing up and be able to have these conversations, to be able to sit here with you guys and talk about those feelings, to have a conversation with my girlfriend, who is now also my safe space going into adulthood.
That's good.
And so for me, it's creating that environment, maintaining that environment through honesty and communication. And that's a thing that I think underserved communities could also use too.
Yeah, that's good. Really good. What about you, fellas?
First I want to say the negative stuff I got from both sides that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
also was one of my greatest tools, because I felt like I was able to assimilate,
Yeah.
and it got me into both groups. So, when I was in high school, some of my best friends were, country boys from Vine Grove, Kentucky, and then I had so many black friends. My best friend in high school was black, so I was able to integrate almost seamlessly both sides. So I don't want to give the impression that it was always negative.
Just
It's
a
mostly
negative.
positive, really.
Yeah,
But it's just like with everything else, the fringes are going to come in.
That's right.
But in terms of the upbringing, I think part of it is when you're underserved or socioeconomically, you're just down. Not only do you not have resources, but you don't have the emotional and mental room left to think about anything else except for instinct and what you were taught.
That's right.
We made conscious decisions, my wife and I, and I don't know if we actually ever talked about it, but we just knew we were not going to discipline my boys the way that I was disciplined, which wasn't horrible. It was just what it was. That's how it was. And my wife has kind of been the beacon for me to follow, like on things. Like I still probably yell more than I need to, but it's not, I don't do it vindictively. It's just in the heat of the moment,
Yeah.
You got somebody who knows you got a 13-year-old that knows exactly what to say to you to push that button. And I don't have, a lot of times I don't feel like I have myself under control enough emotionally to talk myself down off the ledge first. And then, the closest thing I come to sometimes is laughing it off, or laughing.
Yeah.
And that's worse. I think that makes them even more mad.
But can I encourage you a little bit, not to interrupt you? The fact that you're aware of that is a major step. Right? Because I can remember times as a young parent where I wasn't even aware.
Right.
Where it had to take my mom, and my mom, the one who did mine, the one who said, because I said so.
Yeah.
So if she's telling me that I'm kind of losing control, so the fact that you're aware of that, I just wanted to encourage you on that.
My wife won't, she doesn't mince anywhere. She just looks at me and she goes, "Are you serious?" It's like, you were acting like a 13-year-old with our 13-year-old. And usually my reaction in the moment is like, well, that's what he's doing. So that's what I'm doing.
That's where I'm at.
Like it's, So, but then being aware of it later, I know that it's helpful, but it's just,
I know.
Yeah, I think you have to have it under control yourself and be at that point, and so we're working towards it.
Before you can facilitate it, yeah.
Yeah, and my oldest doesn't do it, He's not a button pusher like that. So we rarely have that, I have the thing, with him where I'm just like, really, dude? That's the conversations we have. It's like, you're better than this.
Look, let me tell you, before I get to Aldo, my best friend told me the other day he's got 2 kids. And one is, I think she's 11 and his youngest is 3. And he just called me like, bro, I don't understand. Both parents made both kids and they're just totally different.
Yeah.
One hates me, one does. Like, no, bro, really? No, they're like completely different.
Yeah.
Like, so, it does ultimately come down to us. You know what I mean? Like, they're kids.
Yeah.
So if the work has to be done,
there's
nothing wrong with it. They're kids. So it's got to be us, right? Yeah.
I was just laughing when you were saying that. I got twins, 10-year-old, 2 boys. So it's kind of like my karma is coming back.
I can relate.
But 100%, like you're saying, like they're so different. Like one can push the buttons, the other one, he just do whatever he wants. But I totally agree on the education. It's key.
Yeah.
In my case, we were 5 boys. It was hard for my dad. He was trying to start his own business, work like 10, 12 hours, get home. And if he was stressed, and if you did something bad at school, you just running away.
Yeah.
So I said that because then I studied psychology when I went to college. And I noticed all these patterns like, oh, maybe my grandfather.
Yeah.
His father. That's the way to deal. And then you start to give your parents, you got this perspective, okay, that's how they handle things. And you got more compassion and empathy. So I learned that. I started learning that. But then when you have kids, you notice like you just jump in and doing conclusion. And it's interesting because got this Latino background. My wife, she's from Kentucky.
Okay.
Like, so at the beginning it was hard just to, common ground. But yeah, like you said, take time to have that consciousness, before you jump. And but education is key. And I noticed it, like going back to my experience working with different communities, especially lower communities. But one thing that it was really interesting for me, it was like, if that household has values or like a really spiritual, not religious background,
Yes, yeah.
they knew how to handle with the kids.
Mm.
Sometimes even better that people that they have a lot of money or a lot of power because they also been working. Both of the parents been working so much, they're
Yeah.
stressed, and the kids want the attention, and at school they have a problem. So for me that was interesting, but education is key.
Do we sound like some old guys over here? How old are you, bro?
24.
My daughter turned 23 this week. 24. No, I'm messing with you.
Nah, y'all sound great. I'm tuned in.
You learn it. You learn it. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, kids are different. I got 2 totally different dogs. That takes a different level of empathy. They don't even talk to me.
You win. You win. I want to stay here because we can get back to some of the root causes of community violence. But just hearing you all talk, it made me think of something that's interesting. And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I wonder if this changes depending on upbringing and culture. But what about some gender norms within your household? Like, and for you, you don't have children yet, but maybe it's what you envision or what you saw with mom and dad. For you all, what was it like growing up? What were the norms? Was it the man that went out and worked? Was the woman supposed to stay home, take care of the kids? Who was the lead when it came to a kid being sick? Just basic day-to-day things within your household. What were they like growing up? What are they like now? And has there been any evolution?
Okay.
So you got this one.
Yeah. So let's see. Background for me. So my parents were young when they had me. My mom was 18. My dad was 20.
Okay.
My mom is Korean. My dad's white. And then they divorced early when I was around 4.
Okay.
And my mom remarried a couple years after that. Also, somebody who was white. So my male father figures were always white in the house.
Okay.
I picked up a lot, though, from my friends because I spent so much time probably outside of my house. So, I got the benefit of that. So in terms of their gender roles, I'd say it was pretty evenly split in terms of work. My mom probably carried the bulk of the household stuff. But, and then, my dad usually did not live close. So when I'd go visit my dad, it would be for the summers or for winter breaks or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good thing I wasn't a really, really bad kid. I mean, I got into some trouble, but basically, I love my dad, but there wasn't I don't remember ever being disciplined from my dad, but I also don't remember ever doing anything on those short breaks where I needed to be.
That he knew of.
So, yeah. And then, at home, both my stepfather and my mom served as the disciplinarians usually. So pretty equally. I think it just depended on who was there when whatever it is that went down happened.
Yeah.
But now, like I said, as I got older and I had my own kids, we were doing things a totally different way. And, I don't mind being completely honest here.
Yeah.
My wife runs the household.
Yeah.
Not just, she runs most of the household stuff, and not just because I expect her to, but one, she has a higher level of standard for what needs to be where and when it needs to be there.
Right.
But even bills and everything, I mean, she manages, and she's better at it than I am. She's more organized, and and I do most of the cooking in the house.
Interesting.
So we don't have, I think our kid, and I do it, and I make sure my kids know when I'm in there cooking because I want them to come in there and help, or I want them to be interested in seeing that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, she does most of the cleaning, but I will try to help, when I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for them to see that none of those roles, the working roles, the cooking, the specific things to do with specific chores, those aren't gender related.
Yeah. What about you, Aldo?
It's similar to what you're saying. My wife, she's white.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because my kids, I cook most of the times in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So they like more like the Hispanic food.
Yeah.
So sometimes they say if I'm fixing breakfast, my wife she goes and I'm freaking breakfast. And they say, no, I'll wait for that.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. We're just waiting for that. But it was so interesting when I moved here, more than almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting that. It's still in most of Latino countries, The woman is supposed to serve the food, do the cleaning, and all that.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best things that I ever learned here, actually, in the U.S. is just being independent. Like I start from scratch cooking and all that, and doing all my laundry now, and it feels good. Like
Yeah,
not
yeah.
to depend on anyone. And it was not going to happen with my wife either. Like,
Yeah,
she was
yeah.
kind of but that's the typical norm. Now it's so interesting because it's changing, and mostly, even in Central and South America countries, even in Mexico, because now both parents have to work.
Yeah.
They go to school, and kind of like what was happening here, like 80s, 90s. It's changing there.
Yeah.
So
Something you said hit my heart. You said it feels good. You know what I mean? That balance, sharing, partnership, you said it make you feel good.
Yeah.
So the opposite of not feeling good is feeling bad.
Yep.
So sometimes when you hunker down in those roles or your expectation is based off of these archaic old roles, it doesn't feel so good, which can lead to other things. And so that spoke to my heart when you said that feels good, right?
And like he was saying, like she does all the bills and all that, and I do the cooking. So you're playing as a team now. It's getting harder with the times, the economy and all that. So if you play as a team, that's all I'll say to the new generations.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're good at it. So it relieves that stress. Like someone just doing all the time, all the chores of the house. So,
Could be a lot.
yeah.
He said new generation. He talking to you.
I know it
That's
makes
how-
me think about it because that's exactly what it is. It's like offering a modern take just from my perspective. I grew up in a household where both my parents worked and then they came home and dealt with us accordingly. So they were already kind of doing that kind of balanced household type thing. What that looks like for me now in my relationship with my girlfriend, we've been together about 2 years. We've lived together for most of that time, and so we've had a lot of time to get together and figure out what we're going to do for the future and what this looks like for us now. And so most of our conversations actually talk about me staying home, being in the house and dealing with our children, working with the children, managing the house while she goes and works. And for me, I just really love the idea of being a very present father, being there to see all the milestones. I'm the dude with the camera we were talking about before. I like my camera. I want to catch those moments and send those to her and everything like that. And I like cooking, I like cleaning, like doing the laundry, and I like the house a certain way. As you guys were saying earlier, I'm the person that runs our house that way.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what like that modern take. She wants to go out and she's in medical. She likes to save the world, likes to keep herself real busy and actually help people in that way. And she's like, I actually can't. I don't want to stay home. Like my brain makes me want to stay out there and do that. And I'm like, well, it's modern life. Today, currently, I work remotely. I already managed the house. I woke up today, did the dishes before I logged on and got to work and did my thing. And so, yeah, it's a huge shift. And especially, in a time right now where, it is more expensive to live. Most people do have to keep two incomes to keep a house afloat, things like that. For us, we're just doing what we're doing right now in this hybrid thing. She does what she does best and I do what I do mine. And then maybe one day we'll get to the point where if we do have kids or we're married and we take that next step, I'm home doing the things that I like and I want to do well, and she's doing the things that she wants to do, and she does that well.
Yeah. Man, I'm proud. Just you know what I mean? Just to see a young brother, a young black man, I think of all the sacrifices the things that my grandfather endured, great-grandfather, even my own dad, and to hear you say that and be open to be able to have that kind of flexibility within your household, those are what those sacrifices were made for. And so it's just beautiful to see that. I'll be honest with y'all, like, same with my parents, but I was fighting against society. Like, I was seeing two different things because my parents were great in that regard as well. Like, I think when my parents got married, my dad was sleeping on his cousin's couch. Mom grew up in the housing projects. They couldn't even afford a wedding. So there was no choice but for both of them to get together and grind, right? So, and my dad was a youth baseball coach, so there were pockets of time where he was home more, and my mom consistently worked. But my parents were from the era where they both went to work and they both came home and cleaned and cooked. So it wasn't either or. In order to maintain a house and a family, you got to do it all and you got to work in concert. But while I'm seeing that, I'm also, whenever I go to church, especially the black church, they say that the households run better when a man is out providing and a woman is taking care of a home, right? Then when I'm listening to music, right, seem like all the girls want the guy that's balling, bringing in all the money, right, holding it down. And so I was honestly really, really confused in my early 20s. I didn't know what it was to be a man within the structure of a home. And two, I saw my mom and dad's roles adjust and change. I had my two children, my oldest out of wedlock. And so it took really, I was in my mid to late 30s before I actually got the opportunity to parent within a home. And so ultimately, even though it took me a while to get there, I just realized that this thing is a partnership. What else, fellas? You know, what are some of those other root causes, do you think? And some of it may go back generations when we talk about the root. And we may be seeing kind of the impact of those generations leading up to today.
It's a hard topic.
Yeah.
And in the sense, like, I think it's a mix of family, the person, like I was going back to kids, you know, they have the personality, your environment. And the reason why I say that is lately I've been working, I've been working with the city, been working with housing, going to apartments and things like that. So you notice certain areas, you say like, the violence is rising. Why is it that? It's understandable. Like sometimes, you know, kids, they might not have a place to play. The parents, both of them are working. They're out there, you know, you see drugs. You see some prostitution at the gas station. And the reason why I'm talking, you know, talking like the way it is, because I'm seeing it for the past, you know, a year. And then, and it's hard for a kid. Imagine you just drop off from your boss, you're going to your house, and first thing you see all that. Oh, there's someone fighting right in front of your apartment. So you just run, go to and lock that, waiting for your older brother to come. Maybe in the basement, in those apartments, someone is selling drugs or things like that. It's just going to be way harder, you know, to come out of that environment. Having the same opportunities. I've been noticing that. I've been working with the Hispanic community, with the African American community, also with the African. There's a lot of refugees.
It is. Growing
working.
Congolese.
So huge. And you know, it's hard. Maybe the person's stressed, working 12 hours on the factory, come back, and then seeing all that. You know, it's hard to pay the bills for some. So it's in that sense, it plays a big factor. You know, where you're located. And I see what I noticed from those families that wants to come out from that. The first thing they want to do is, I want to move from this place. I want to move from here. Doesn't matter where I go, but just want to go to other place.
Want to get away.
Want to get away, maybe for my kids. So, and that's what I've seen so far.
And I agree with you 100%. And obviously in the work that I do in the mayor's office addressing gun violence, and then of course 2 years ago we saw the most domestic related gun violence, homicides in the history of Lexington, Kentucky, right? That was just 2 years ago. And so my mind is always, how are we working upstream, right? Not just pulling people out of the river, but going upriver and figuring out why they're falling in. And I'm with you. You know, I was working at a middle school about 7 years ago, and a teacher said, Mr. Devine, can you please come to my room? I got this kid, hoodie on, head laying down. He will not pay attention. He won't listen to me. We got a test today. I'm like, okay, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? You as teacher, but I said, okay, you know, I'll come. And at that time I was working as a para. And so when I went in there, my first instinct was to do probably what every other educator was doing in his life. And it was, hey, head up, let's go, up, right? And I realized that didn't work, right? Just because I was Black and could identify with them, right? Just because I make hip hop music doesn't mean I can just come in, right? There still has to be different behavior. So I said, let me change my behavior and actually have a conversation with this kid. So I kneeled down beside him. I tapped him on the back, rubbed his back. I said, hey, man, what's going on? You all right? And that question, going from adversarial to are you okay? He instantly opened up. He said, I'm hungry. Said, we didn't get to eat dinner last night. I got to school too late. They weren't serving breakfast anymore in the cafeteria. I just need something to eat. Come with me. I got you. Took him down to Frisk, got him a snack, came back to class. He was good to go. And I think he might have aced the test.
You know what's so interesting, Devine? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please, please.
When COVID hit, like we noticed in the Latino community a rise in domestic violence.
Yes.
They were spending more time.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, spouse and what we noticed is like some of those people, because they're working so hard, they didn't even know their partner, or they got married too young, and they never wanted to be with that person.
Yeah.
That was one of these, you know, there's other things like alcohol, maybe using substances, different. But yeah, we noticed that on the kids when they were going also to school. Those kids like not eating.
That's right.
And you think because you have just the same skin, you can go ahead and have that power.
That's right.
You know.
My dad said this, God bless his soul. He lost his battle to cancer in 2017. And he looked at him, and there was an intense election, prior to that. And he just used to look at me, and he was like, "Yo, we're going backwards." He was like, "My generation sacrificed so you all could take us to somewhere we had never been before." And he said, "I feel like," he was really speaking to the Black community, but he just felt like we were moving backwards as a society when we should continue to perfect.
One of the things that I think is really fracturing the community that didn't necessarily exist when you guys were coming up is the technology factor of this.
Teachers.
I was
there too?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the one thing that I think exists now that didn't exist back then. And the fact that sometimes it really does create those echo chambers. While it can be great, and I'll hammer home all day having safe spaces, whether they're like physical, you talk to somebody, or the internet can provide you one. While all that stuff is good, it can have adverse consequences too, reinforcing negative behavior. Like on social media, you'll see, hey, why our question, like this is on Threads, all they do is ask provocative questions on there. It's like, question parents, are you still hitting your kids? And it's like, and in the comments, it'll be over and over again. It's like, hey, I got beat, my dad got beat, and we all turned out fine. And you'd find, and I'll find a community of mine on there. It's like, actually, we're not fine. We all got mental health issues. And we're working through unlearning that and processing things in a different way.
Yeah.
And so, this can be extended beyond this conversation too. When we talk about, things that happen economically, or understanding the world in a different way, or some parents who let their iPad or something teach their children instead of reinstilling those values that we now have had generations of teaching to do.
Yeah.
That's just the difference of the factors. That's one thing that if we talk about going backwards, it's because we're not teaching those lessons that we've had for generations, and we're letting something else influence that.
That's a perfect way to kind of maybe segue towards the end of this conversation, maybe, is that challenge. And I think all of us need to say something concrete, whether it's things we can do, right? And I always look at self, right? Ice Cube, one of my favorite rappers, said, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? So to me, instead of looking what society needs to do or the politicians need to do, my first thing is, okay, what can I do and try to lead from within? So let's challenge ourselves, right? Because we've talked about the barriers. We've talked about the cultural norms that we fought against. We've talked about technology. We talked about music. We know the conversations, problematic things that we probably hear our friends and some of our family members say, right? So what are things that we can do to continue this evolution? Like you said, because when I watch my dad, like, try to figure out how to build like a shed from scratch, with wasn't no phone, Siri, what's the distance between, none of that. I seen him taking his time. He was out there doing his thing, and he was figuring it out it was almost like he should have had a degree. Like the amount of detail and time that it took, whatever it took, he figured it out. Or when my parents were at the kitchen table, right? Trying to figure out, okay, we got our paycheck. All right, he got baseball practice. We got to get him a new glove. All right, we can let the cable bill roll over. If they cancel the cable, who cares? We grew up with no cable, right? Well, we got to make sure the rent's paid. Got to put some gas money in the car. we literally saw our parents figuring it out.
Yep.
So I think our generation has to figure this out. No matter how much is coming in, no matter what we're dealing with, we got to continue to perfect and be better.
You know what's so interesting, Devine? Sorry to interrupt you again.
No, please.
It's what I noticed. I don't have the answer, but what I noticed, trial and error.
Yeah.
I got 2 boys, 10-year-old. You know, they're getting to that stage, tablet, and you know, social media, Fortnite, and all that. So they do sports. For me, it's precious because you have to go out.
Yeah.
If it's raining, you got to do sports. They do soccer. They do also boxing and they do swimming. But I take that time. I go with them. But then when they come back, say, Can we play Fortnite? So I sit with them, but they're trying to explain me how it works. Like I didn't. For me, it was so interesting. Like the content, how Fortnite works. Like I didn't know anything about that. So I was playing with them, and we never had that. Like you can, get a new skin and playing with people from other places.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know that. So how the chat works, how you connect with other people.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, oh, it's all evil.
Yeah.
They have so much information. Like he said, like, well, I can get that information. I don't have to believe whatever my aunt is saying. I just do ChatGPT, look that, and I'm like,
look it up.
She's right,
That's right.
So
To gift
I
and
will
a curse.
start learning from them, from that technology, but I go back to our parents.
Yeah.
You have to do that activity, go out, and you gotta help your mom, with the chores of the house. Things like that simple, like, and I try to put in, especially with the minorities, I try to put like, if you want to do a business,
Yeah.
go and start learning about that.
Yeah.
Because we always complain like, oh, we're not getting the results. You can do it. I mean, just get that information and push yourself and start learning on the side.
Increases financial freedom, flexibility.
Yeah.
So pouring back, creating opportunities, but then working through our own kids first.
Yeah.
Right? Breaking some of those curses through our own kids, right? What about you, Jason?
What I've learned from my wife is that the home should be the safest place. They should not have to work. And I would never have considered making my children work for love, for example. That's going to be there.
Right.
But I noticed that I don't want to say they're not motivated, but they are motivated kids. But it was a situation where I compared it to when I was growing up. I'd have to find my own way to practice. Parents maybe came to one of my high school soccer games, like literally like one, and that was, it was okay. Some parents came to all, but some people's parents came to none. And that was kind of the thing. And it's not, I never wanted them to work for affection, but I had to wrap my head around that they don't really even have to work for praise or whatever. They just need to do their best, and that is enough. And it dawned on me because I remember like 5 years ago, I'd take my son to soccer practice, and then I'd hang out there and watch. And part of it was convenience because, it's an hour and a half. What am I going to do? Go home, come right back, watch. And then my father-in-law was like, "Why are you guys all standing there watching practice?" I was like, "You know what? I really don't know." I was like, "I'm interested and I'm here and I want to watch," And I thought, I don't know. I feel like that at the end of the day is going to be better for them long term. Knowing when they look back on their home,
you were present,
that we were there.
So, I like that. What about you, young king?
I think I'll close out with something my mom always says to me. She's like, "You can do whatever you put your mind to, but it just matters what you put your mind to. Creating those good works." For me, and my future children or anything else, just instilling the value of using your tools as tools, using your resources as resources. Like, I want to be present. Use me as a resource, as somebody who's seen things that you have not seen. And use your technology as a resource. Don't use it to go down whatever negative hole you can. Use it as a tool. I'm a proud member of YouTube University, I always say. That's what, like, I don't go out hammering sheds by myself, but I'll Google it, I'll YouTube it. Somebody knows how.
That's right.
Like, and I want to use those tools and teach my kids how to use those tools. And so not only are they getting the best version of me, the things that I've learned from my parents and grandparents and further back, but they're now getting the best of what the world can offer them. They're now seeing, I don't know when this is going to air or anything, but we just had that hurricane come through.
Yeah.
And it's like connecting with areas that we just didn't have. No one would have thought that Asheville, North Carolina would be hit the way that it was. But I now have empathy for a whole group of people, want to support a whole group of people that I've never met before, that look different than me, talk different than me, and are from a different part of the world. And so teaching my kids and teaching other people in my community to have that level of empathy, to have that level of care, to use those tools and use everything to the best of their ability. I mean, that's what I want their mind on,
I love y'all. I love y'all. Man, for me, y'all got me so hyped. I think the way I'll close, and I'm going to challenge myself, is I think the first thing is, and not just with my wife, but it's going to start with my wife and at home. When somebody tells me something about myself that I don't want to hear, I'm going to listen. Mm-hmm. Even if I feel like I know 100%, you tripping. You don't know what you talking about. That ain't me. I don't care what it is, right? If somebody tell me my hair's red, I'm going to take time. I'm going to look real good in the mirror and double, triple check, because I think we miss a lot of growth moments because I think people try to come to us, and sometimes God will perfect you through other people. And a lot of times as men, we don't want to hear all that. I done worked all day. I'm dealing with these kids. I'm a good person. And you going to try to tell me I'm doing this, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to listen. I think the second thing I'm going to challenge myself to do is I am going to challenge my friends and my family members more when it comes to toxic language and behavior. Now, when it comes to our close friend groups, and that's where it's tough because y'all joke with each other. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of your safe space. So I admit I'm going to have to navigate that. But I also hear a lot from folks I'm not that close to. I hear a lot of stuff said around me that is not joking, right? And I'm going to start challenging all of it. What do I have to lose? If I lose a friend because I'm trying to make them a better man, a better person, which ultimately could trickle down to their family, our community, then maybe we're not that good of friends anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something I want to do. So, fellas, great conversation. Dope. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, fellas.
That's it.
My pleasure.
My man. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for the Good Guy Guide. We hope this conversation sparks something in you, a new perspective, a call to action, maybe just a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more respectful and equitable world. Remember, change starts with each of us, so let's continue this conversation, challenge assumptions, but most importantly, let's be the change that we wish to see. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with somebody that needs to hear this message. Tune in next time as we dive even deeper into the issues that matter, bringing you more insights and stories to inspire positive action. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep doing your part in making the world a better place. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Good Guy Guide. Thank you.
Good job.